Fear no steel is what Sean over at Triple B says, and I gotta say, Sean, I do fear this steel only slightly from an edge testing perspective, because I think it's going to hurt the arm. Hello again, welcome back to the channel. Well, I'm welcoming myself back to YouTube. It's been about a month since my last film. I've just had a lot of other stuff to do, and you know, this has not had the pride of place that perhaps it should, but you know, here we are. I'm back making a video that we all like to see today, aren't we? So this is a pretty standard classic Cedric and Ada edge test, with the one thing that is very far from standard being that this steel is 15V, which is pretty rare steel. You don't see it on many things. I would assume it's a pretty difficult to acquire and machine and just deal with in large amounts type of steel. And what I'm going to guess is that it's a very, very vicious edge holding steel as well, because 15V, as the imaginative name suggests, has 15% vanadium, or just slightly under it, but that's obviously what they're going for. So that's a lot of cutting power in a pocket knife, without a doubt. I don't know of many other steels, if any, that have that amount of vanadium in them. Also coming to the plate to help with hardening and edge retention is a 3.4% carbon content, which is pretty darn high as well. That's like the carbon content of ZDP 189 with a huge extra amount of vanadium in it. So, you know, we're looking at something that's pretty remarkable. Is it going to beat Rex 121? I think I would not be surprised if it did. So, this is a virgin edge here. Has not cut anything. Brian sent this to me. Thank you, Brian. Brian sourced me one of these. I'm always out of the rat race entirely with the Spyderco sprint runs and drops and whatnot, and this was one that I really didn't want to miss out on. So Brian got this one in my hot little hand. Thank you to Brian. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to cut twisted sisal rope until the knife no longer slices a held sheet of paper. I'll show you some images of the edge between the two purple markers that I've made. That's the edge that I'm going to test. I'll show you that now on the screen of like as a pre-edge, you know, how it looks straight from the box. You know, you can definitely see the edge. You know, it's always funny to see these things close up. Just a paper cut test. I'd be very surprised if this doesn't cut paper right now. You know, it's a little draggier and toothier feeling than I expected, but then this is a steel that I've never used before, and I don't know how they would go sharpening this at the factory and what they're using, if they're using different things or if they're just using the same old belts that they sharpen, you know, all the other knives with. So the true result will be in my sharpened version of this, which I'll do after this initial cut, but let's see how much twisted sisal rope it cuts before it no longer does that anymore. Let's do it. Move myself up this time because otherwise it hurts my arm. I got a tattoo on my arm recently. Oh yeah, I'll just go and get the rope and get on with it later. Maybe we'll talk about that later. Been a while. I've been doing yoga and Pilates and other strength things, but the fine motory sort of grippy strength, gotta admit, I've been keeping up with it. Still very sharp at 400. No worries. Oh, it's interesting. It doesn't feel as... I've had steels feel much easier to push through the rope before and on the paper slice, but it's just persistently about the same as when it started, that kind of crunchiness to it, which is maybe the steel, maybe it's just the specific sharpening job, but yeah, it just doesn't feel like it's changed at all in the 500 cuts so far. So Let's do 100 more, shall we? Very stout, very resolute. Yeah, you fall out of practice with this and it bites you, that's for sure. Might be a slightly ambitious return though. It's like, hey, you haven't driven a car in 12 years. Here's a Bugatti Veyron. Pretty much what I'm doing to my physique. 600 we're on, yes. And I can still see one purple dot, so we'll start from there. $700. I feel much different from 100. But yeah, it's not a, it's funny, it's hard to describe. It's not as easy a cut as often they are, but it's just constant. It's like, yeah, it's like someone who's 6 out of 10 hot, but for their whole life, rather than, you know, you're a 10 in your 20s, and then when you age terribly, and then you're 50 and you're a 2 because your face falls apart, you know? So it's like, it's a, you know, that's the theory behind this performance, you know, it's just reliable, steady, consistent, you know, fine cutting enjoyment happening, but some are much, much nicer for those first couple hundred cuts. They're like whoosh, straight through. Delirious from the cutting. This would be 800. That's a lot of cuts. Oh, sliding slightly slower. Still making the cut though at 800. That's actually a pretty remarkable factory edge, really, isn't it? Do they have? I don't think they've been this. Have the factory edges been this high before? Maybe recently, but not often. Going a little slower because I'm at that stage where I'm tired, and so I'll hurt myself if I go too fast. So 860 we're at. 900 cuts on a factory edge. Still going. Still going. Okay. Yeah, that I thought it was going to stop that time. I must admit, it's feeling squickier against the rope, but it's still making the cuts. My hand's fatiguing a bit, which is not making it easier, but the knife is still performing. Right, so we'll go to 950. I can still see my little purple dot. I could remember where it was anyway, honestly. 1, 2. Ooh. Ah. Yeah, okay. Now it's got a flat spot. It's not consistently slicing the paper until I slice the paper consistently. Yeah, nah. Yeah, right there is a skip spot, and it's definitely within the purple zone. So, alrighty, 950 cuts. Alright, okay. In the interest of padding up my content, that's going to be today's video. Oh, blister. I always forget the Paramilitary 2s are kind of finger killers with this test. 950 cuts on a factory edge. That may be the best factory edge I've ever had. And given what my sharpening often does to knives, I'm expecting a very, well, I'm foreseeing, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a pretty remarkable result next video when I do the proper fancy edge sharpen. So this looked very much just like a pretty standard Spyderco edge. It's got the same kind of little smile at the beginning. You know, it's just kind of a machine finish kind of look to it. So nothing too crazy. And it's usually about 17, 18 degrees or so if it's a, you know, like a normal Spyderco edge. So yeah, I would expect a pretty good result tomorrow. And that is, well, that's probably the best factory edge. That is the best factory edge I've ever had. So we're already in a milestone there. So Well selected, Spyderco, well chosen. That's this particular knife. Cut my particular twisted sisal rope test 950 times. And that is, well, really, really good M390 with a really, really good edge can sometimes get to about 800 cuts with a 17-degree mirror polish. So, yeah, this steel ain't playing around. Right here. Let's get uploading, and I'll see you tomorrow once I've rested up. Oh yeah, okay, now we're out of the steel zone, the steel nerd zone. I got a tattoo of Lemon Grab from Adventure Time. He's under my arm here, so that's been fun. Me and wife got the matching one. We've always watched that show with our kids, so it's a bit of a meaningful thing to us. That being said, Lemon Grab I think is possibly the funniest character of all of the ooh, unacceptable. So that's that. But apart from that, it's been sorry, no real reason for being away. Just kind of haven't got to it. Been doing other things. I might just do a bit of a catch-up video in the next video or so. I'm on a little tiny bit of holidays at the moment, so that should sort of reason that more videos will exist pretty shortly because of that. All right, goodbye.